Semester number 1, lesson number 32. Our aim today is how did the election of 1860 create a division in the Union? And the first thing I want you guys to do is annotate the do now on secession and answer the following question. What was the basis for Southern secession from the Union? And remember, secession means to leave. And now we're moving really into the idea of the Civil War and the rise of the Republican Party, the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and the election of 1860 are going to be our focus today. All right. The rise of the Republican Party. The Republican Party was opposed or against slavery, all right? And they were a sectional party, meaning they only existed in the North, all right? And their slogan was free soil, free labor, free men. And the first Republican president is going to be Abraham Lincoln. He is a staunch believer in equality, and he opposes slavery. He does not believe that slavery should exist, especially in America. And he is the kind of the leader of the Republican Party. Lincoln first gets his name during the Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858. Lincoln is running at this point for U.S. Senate in Illinois, and Lincoln, who is a Republican, challenges Stephen A. Douglas, who is a Democrat, for a Senate position. All right, they have a series of very famous debates in which they argue about all things from African Americans' rights to the concept of slavery. And Douglas wins the position of Illinois Senator, so he defeats Lincoln in the senatorial race of 1858. However, this weakened Douglas's popularity in the South, and it made Abraham Lincoln a national political figure against slavery. From this point forward, he's looked at as the savior that might be able to get slavery out of this country. A few years later, in 1860, Lincoln runs for president. All right. And the election of 1860 is a very interesting one. Another person that runs for president in 1860 is Stephen Douglas, who he went against in 1858 in Illinois. In 1860, the election showed how clearly divided the U.S. had become. And if you look at this picture or this chart on the right side, each of those pieces of the pie is a different candidate. So you could see that there was no overwhelming majority and that people had very different opinions. There was only one remaining national party, which is the Democratic Party. And it's split with North and South, both running a candidate. So there was the Northern Democrats and the Southern Democrats. All right. Lincoln becomes president because he wins 39.9% of the popular vote. So when Lincoln wins the election, some of the Southern states threatened to secede or break apart from the Union. And that was going to be led by South Carolina, which we'll talk about in a second. More on tomorrow. All right. And here are some banners from the 1860 election just to show you some primary sources. All right. And if you look at how separated, if you look at this map and you realize how kind of sectionalized the country was, all right. Everyone in the North voted for Lincoln. Everyone in the South voted for Breckinridge. All right. John Bell won the middle states, the middle ground states in Texas, and then Stephen Douglas won one. So you can see that the country is very separated. And the issue which separates the country is slavery. All right. The secession crisis. In December of 1860, South Carolina has had enough. They don't want Lincoln as president. They view him as a threat to the way in which they live. So they secede and, or leave the Union. They form the Confederate States of America, the CSA, along with 6 other southern states. Outgoing President James Buchanan does nothing because he doesn't want to deal with it. Lincoln, when he comes into office, says, no, this is not possible. States cannot leave the Union. Very similar to what Andrew Jackson said when South Carolina tried to do when he was president, right? He says, this is a country of people, not of states, and a state cannot just leave the Union. All right? Check for understanding. Which phrase best completes the title for the partial outline shown below? Reasons for the blank. A, increasing sectionalism. B, disagreements over states' rights issues. C, breakdown of compromise. Or D, election of 1860. A, the adoption of the Bill of Rights. B, the failure of the Whiskey Rebellion. C, secession of southern states from the Union. Or D, the start of the Revolutionary War. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. In pairs of no more than 2. Answer the question on the handout of 1860. Make sure to analyze the map and look at what is being discussed. Students in the group must finish their own handouts and be prepared to answer multiple choice questions. And we will finish by revisiting the aim. How did the election of 1860 create division in the Union? And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Have a good night.